First of all, thank you for having me on your call today. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of the information that I've learned in the last 7 years being part of LifeVantage, and kind of mix that with what I've done in the past. So hopefully today I won't ramble too much. I'll share some information that people can use and run with. And thanks again. I noticed your opening slide that you had me down as the horse expert. Well, here in America, we refer to the expert as the guy from out of town. So compared to Australia, I guess I'm from out of town, so that works, doesn't it? That's supposed to be a joke. Anyway, so, well, thanks again for the opportunity to be here today. Let me tell a little bit about my story first, about how I got involved with LifeVantage, and then maybe I'll go into some of my my animal background and what I've seen using this product and kind of the science that I've learned over the last few years. I was invited to join LifeVantage at a time in my life when I desperately needed a lifeboat. I had just gone through 18 months of unemployment. I had lost my home, lost my savings, lost my retirement account. I did have a job, but the job was a minuscule job in comparison to what I'd done prior. I was actually the county dog catcher, working for the sheriff's office. And yes, I was able to use some of my animal experience there, but clearly it wasn't what I'd had in the past, which was a $250,000 a year corporate job. Very excited about getting involved in this because I saw it as a way out. And the way I got invited, very simply, was I was at my chiropractor one day, Dr. Gary Campbell. Many of you know who he is. And as I walked out of Skip's office that day, he said, "Greg, what are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Nothing." "Why?" And he said, "Why don't you come back to my office at 6:30 tonight? I have something I want to share with you." He didn't say LifeVantage. He didn't say Protandim. He didn't say oxidative stress or anything else. He just said, "Come back. I have something I want to share with you." I tell you that story because I think it's a powerful story that we should be telling more often when we talk to people. Just simply say, "I have something very important I want to share with you. Let's schedule some time to do it." And I think that's one of the best introductions to this business you can possibly have. So when people ask me, how do you invite people to look at LifeVantage? I ask them, how'd you get invited? It got you, it'll get someone else. And trust me, I've used that introduction many, many times and very successfully. So I came back and I listened to the story, and I knew immediately there was something special about this story. I didn't understand it completely. I understand it a little bit, but I knew there was something special, and because of that, I wanted to be part of it. And so quite honestly, I turned around to Skip and I said, "Please tell me there are ways a guy can make money on this." And he said, "Certainly." And so I proceeded to listen to the rest of the LifeVantage story from Tyler Daniels, learned how to make money, and I said, this is something I have to do. But I was broke at the time, dead broke. If I wanted to talk to a bill collector, all I had to do was answer the phone. So I had to be creative on how I was able to afford to come join the business. At the time, quite honestly, my wife and I were in such tough financial straits. We were selling trees off of our ranch in order to make ends meet. We were selling 5 to 10 trees a month. The tree man I was selling those to had one particular tree, however, that he wanted and wanted badly. And my wife had said, no, he couldn't have it. He'd actually offered me $1,000 for that tree, which is what I needed to get in the business. And my wife had said no. And the reason she said no was, quite honestly, it basically sat in our front yard. So walking out of that building, I knew that that tree was my key to joining LifeVantage. So my first phone call was not to my wife. It was to Steve, the tree guy, and said, "Steve, do you still want that tree?" And he said, "Absolutely." I said, "Great. Be at my house in the morning with your tree spade and a check for $1,000. It's yours." And then I had to go home and tell my wife. Needless to say, that conversation did not go entirely well because she had seen me fail at network marketing before. In fact, I've failed at it, if you will, 7 times before I came to LifeVantage. Never made enough money at any of those companies to even cover my expenses. And yet here we've been able to hit it out of the park at LifeVantage. There's a reason why, because LifeVantage has all the right combination of things to make it work. And that's why I'm here. And I will tell you, I think anyone can be a success here because they have all of the right tools in all the right places. So long story short, Steve comes and gets the tree. I get the check, get involved in LifeVantage, and I go to work. Quite honestly, I did not take a day off for 180 days. I worked on Thanksgiving Day. I worked on Christmas Day. I remember doing a webinar on Skype to Australia in the middle of the night on Christmas Day, because that's when we were trying to get some, generate some interest in Australia. And it was the middle of the night, but I didn't care because I was trying to help my team in any way I could, and I was asked to participate. So for 180 days, I didn't take a day off. If I wasn't working for the sheriff, I was working on my LifeVantage business. Nights, weekends, holidays, it didn't matter. We worked every day. Did it work? Well, I would say so. We got our first 5-figure check about 10 months in. We were elite distributors by the 13th month. And by the 18th month, I was retired as a deputy from the sheriff's office on 4.5 times what the sheriff paid me. So does it work? Yes. Do you have to work to make it work? You do. But it absolutely makes it work. There's no doubt about it. So here I am now, 7 years later, 6 years later from that point of going full time, and super excited about everything that we're doing here. One of the things along the way that I've been able to work into my LifeVantage business, in addition to just the normal health and wellness, is the equine side of things and the animal side of things. And fortunately, I have a lot of training and a lot of background in that area. And so I've been able to offer a lot, and I've also been able to get a lot of information from different people about it. So let's start at the basics of this. Horses are mammals. Dogs are mammals. They have the same kind of cell structure in their bodies that humans do. And that is why our formula works. And just like we say in a human, the only thing we do is reduce oxidative stress, we do the exact same thing in a horse. We do the exact same thing in a dog. I know you did a webinar here a week or so ago with Dr. Mark Gordon, one of the smartest guys I know on human science. And I'm quite certain in his webinar, he talked about all the different systems inside of a human that are affected by oxidative stress. Well, those same systems are in a horse. Those same systems are in a dog, and they are all affected by oxidative stress. And the reduction of oxidative stress in a horse or a human is going to help its health. There's no question about it. And so what I tell people is I've had the conversation with multiple doctors, multiple veterinarians, and they all agree with me when I ask the question and say, what's the difference between a horse cell and a human cell? And they say, really not much. They say that's why there's so many drugs today that started out as equine drugs and now are used on humans, and so many drugs that started out as human drugs and now are used on equines, because they work exactly the same. They get the same results in the body. So Protandim does the same thing for a horse that it does for a human. It causes the horse's cells to upregulate the production of 3,000 plus beneficial enzymes, downregulate the production of 400 plus damaging enzymes. And then beyond that, it's up to us to feed the animal, like the human, the right nutrition so that it can have the tools it needs to heal itself, to grow and protect itself, and to provide all the nutrition it needs for peak performance. Now, most interestingly in horses, I will tell you that the conversation I have with people most often in horses revolves around the subject of inflammation. If you're a horse owner out there today, you know that every time you see inflammation on a horse, it's after the injury has started. It's after the performance problem has appeared. All those kinds of things. And so what do? We treat that inflammation with heat, cold, water, infrared therapy, laser therapy, ultrasound, injections, supplements, pills, drugs. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, because no one modality works on every horse. And so you try one, and if that doesn't work, you try another, and you try another, and you try another, so hopefully you find something that works. Well, very simply, Protandim, in the process of creating all these additional antioxidant enzymes in the body, one of those is called glutathione. Glutathione is the master regulator of the immune system. It cleans and detoxifies the liver. It has a very powerful anti-inflammatory component to it. In fact, some doctors think it's the most powerful anti-inflammatory on the planet. And so now you have a choice when you treat inflammation on a horse. Do you treat it after the problem occurs and you have the performance issue and possibly the loss of use of that animal, if it's a competitive animal, or do you have an onboard anti-inflammatory response that shows up every day at the cellular level. And I just ask people, which one of those do you think makes more sense to you, to have the onboard response immediately, or to wait until the problem shows up and then try and treat it? And I think the answer is pretty simple, and people seem to understand that, and they seem to follow it pretty well. So what I would tell you is all the training you get, all the science you get, all the information we get on NRF2 and how it works in a human body, it works the same way in a horse. There's no question about it. It works exactly the same way. Now, me personally, I've had some pretty significant results with my horses. I currently own 6 head of horses. During the 7 years I've been part of LifeVantage, I've probably been through another half a dozen horses that have come and gone during that period of time. And I will tell you that I saw good things in all of them, but let me just tell you a few of the stories about some of my horses. One of my horses, several of my horses, quite honestly, are older horses. My oldest is 30 years old. The next oldest is 26. The 26-year-old has been one of those horses that has always been kind of scared of his own shadow. He's one of those horses that needed a human on its back for it to relax. And if you've been around horses long enough, you probably know what kind of horse I'm talking about. If a leaf blows by, they jump out of their skin. But as soon as you just jump in the saddle, they're like, okay, I've got my human with me now. I'm good. And they relax and they go on and perform. So I own one of those horses. And for years and years and years, every day when I would let him out of his run, out of the barn, because all of our horses come to the barn at night and they go to pasture during the day, when I would let him out to go to the pasture, he would bolt. And sometimes he would bolt violently to the point where you had to be very careful in opening the gate, because if not, you were going to get run over. There was no question about it. Well, I noticed about 60 to 90 days after he started on Protandim that all of a sudden he wasn't bolting through the gate anymore. He was just walking through the gate. And eventually, not only would he walk through the gate, he'd just walk out and he'd stop and he'd stand. And where in the past I'd never been able to even walk up to him and talk to him after or pet him after he got out of his run, now he would stand and wait for me. And I could come up and I could pet him and I could literally have a conversation with this horse if I wanted to before he'd go on. Then it got to the point where I would open the gate and he would just stand there. He wouldn't even come out. So I would have to go in and I would literally have to encourage him to leave his run, because I needed to get the rest of the horses out so that I could go on with my day. And to this day now, he's that same way. He's calm, he's quiet, he's well-mannered. And as a 26-year-old gelding, and for those of you who've owned older horses and you've had a horse maybe that had what people refer to as that aged gelding syndrome, this was a tremendously positive response to see him with that kind of an attitude, because it just made him safer to be around. Now in the mornings when my nephews spend a lot of nights with me, when my nephews are here and they're 8 and 13, I can send my 8-year-old nephew out there to turn the horses out in the morning, and I know I don't have to worry about him getting run over, because I know this big horse, big yellow Palomino horse we call Moon, I know Moon's just going to walk out quietly and gently, or he's either going to have to go in and swat him on the butt to get him out of the run, because he'll just be that quiet. So for me, that's just one of the things that I've seen that's been very demonstrative. I had another occurrence with a younger horse that was 8 years old, and I had sent him to a trainer, and he had allowed the horse to get kicked in the head. He was using the horse to do something that he wasn't supposed to be doing. The horse got kicked in the head, and it crushed his skull between his eyes, just completely crushed it in. And he didn't tell me it happened. And I found out about it 2 months later, because the horse was up in Montana, and I literally found out that the horse might be on its deathbed. And he had actually turned this horse out to a dry lot with the hopes that the horse would die on its own, and he could just say, hey, I don't know what happened, but your horse died one day. Well, I got the horse back, and we had to have surgery on him, and they actually had to remove a piece of dead bone from his skull, from right between his eyes, right here. We had to remove that bone. It was about as big as a silver dollar. And the vet, the surgeon at Colorado State University, which is their vet teaching hospital, which is one of the finest in the world, he told me, he said, Greg, get ready. He said, your horse's head's going to swell up. He's going to look like a Klingon from Star Wars. But just understand, in a couple of weeks, it will come down. Well, I'd had the horse on 2 pills of Protandim every day this entire time. And I just asked the hospital, I said, while you're treating him, would you please keep him on Protandim every day, twice a day? And they said, sure, no problem. So they did. I can tell you to this day, I wish I had the pictures up here to show you, there was 0 swelling. The horse never swole at all. And the doctors were amazed at what was happening because they expected this incredible inflammatory response that did not happen. That opened the door for me to share with some of these doctors what Protandim was and how it worked. And to this day, there's some of them that are still interested in that anti-inflammatory response. So the reality is those are just 2 of my personal experiences that I've seen that have been tremendously positive. My 30-year-old horse is an Ironman. He has been a rope horse since he was the age of 4. He's probably roped 20,000 steers in his life. I retired him here a few years ago, but at 30 years old, he looks like your average 13-year-old horse. He doesn't look anything like a 30-year-old horse. And I credit Protandim for helping him stay healthy, helping him stay happy. He's got bright eyes. He's got a great attitude. He's excited every day. He runs in the pasture every day. And for a horse that's been worked that hard in his life, I'm pretty excited about the fact that I think Protandim's done some super positive things for him. If you want more examples of those kinds of stories, I've actually have a little white paper out there, and I will tell you that in that white paper, I go through a lot of different testimonials. And if you go to www.teamdieker, TEAMDIEKER.com, it puts you to my Google Doc site. And just download the document that says Horses and Protandim, and it'll give you a whole bunch more of testimonials and give you some idea of what we've seen. I see a number of people on the chat line popping up the question about Protandim. I don't know about Protandim and when it's coming to Australia or anywhere else outside of the U.S. for that matter, but I do know this. I know lots and lots of people are feeding Protandim to not only their horses, but they're also feeding it to their dogs. A half to a quarter of a pill is plenty for an average dog. Quite honestly, one of the things that Dr. McCord explained to me early on was dosage in a horse, in his opinion, is 2 a day. So those of you who are looking for that dosage question, his is 2 Protandim a day is what Dr. McCord told me. Because he said it's not weight, it's surface area of the body. And so that's how he defined it to me. So think of the surface area of your dog versus the surface area of your horse. So a quarter of a pill or a half a pill or even less in a dog, even a big dog, is half a pill is more than enough based on surface area of the dog. So don't be afraid to only give your dog, a portion of the pill. I wouldn't imagine, unless there's an acute problem that you're really trying to go after, that anything over half a pill is necessary in a dog. And I don't say that as a medical professional or as a vet or anything else. I'm just giving you my opinion based on what I've seen other people do, what I've heard from other people, and story after story after story from other people that are doing the exact same thing. So hopefully we're going to see Protandim in all the countries soon. That's always an arduous process to get it approved no matter where it goes. But the reality is it is something our company is keen on getting done in all of our countries to have eventually all of our products. So if that's the dosage for a horse, how do you feed it to a horse? Now, I will tell you that all of my horses get a scoop of Equine Senior every day, which is just a senior level feed. Mostly it's beet pulp, a few other things, but not really high in grain, not high in carbos and starch, but it's got some molasses in it, so it's got a good taste to it. I just throw 2 Protandim in the bucket with that 1 scoop, and they scoop it right up. They eat it right up. I know people who grind it. The best grinding instructions I can give you is go to your local Walmart, and for $15 here in the U.S., they have coffee grinders, just little tabletop coffee grinders. Get one of those. They grind pills fantastically. You're done in 20 seconds, and you don't have to worry about doing it by hand. Dump that onto the grain. It's going to attach to the grain, and even though the taste might be a little pungent because of the turmeric, I promise you their desire to eat the grain will outweigh their desire to eat to avoid the Protandim or avoid the turmeric. I know people who have used molasses. They keep a jar of molasses in the barn, and they just take the pill and dip it into the jar of molasses right before they feed it, throw it on the grain, or put it on their hand, and then the horses eat it right up. But I've heard of people grinding it, putting it in water, and dosing the horse with a catheter syringe, stuff like that. I don't think anybody needs to go to that extent. I think if you grind it, put it in with a tiny bit of grain or a tiny bit of a pelleted feed, something that's not going to make them hot, you can do that, or the molasses trick, whatever. It'll all work in the end. I had one that kept spitting it out to start with, and so I ground hers for about 3 months every day, and then I quit grinding it, and I just threw it in the bucket, and she started eating it right away. So I think you can transition horses from one to the other. The number one thing I think with horses is pay attention when you feed this to your horse. It's not an overnight difference. You're not going to see, one day the horse is dead buck lame, and the next day it's running across the pasture like a 2-year-old. That's not going to happen. It takes time. It took time to have that injury, or it took time to have that insult in that horse over weeks or months or years. It's going to take time to heal it. There's no doubt about it. So don't expect miracles. Don't expect the kind of things that maybe some people see with drugs, where they go in and they mask the symptoms so badly that all of a sudden the horse is performing better the next day. Don't expect to see that. Expect to see it take a little bit of a time. And like I said, in my horses, I think I was probably 30 or 60 days in before I really started noticing a difference, with the exception of the horse that had the surgery. But it'll take a little bit of time. But is it worth it? Yes, it's absolutely worth it, in my opinion, because I know, based on the human science that is there, that transitions to a horse side, that it's going to work. It's going to reduce the oxidative stress. It's going to make the horse healthier, and going to allow the horse's system to manage and maintain itself far, far better than it did before. So those facts I'm absolutely certain of. On dogs, the magic term that I've heard from a lot of people is 21 days. They say it takes, the study actually was proven that when they did the first study on canine health, which is what we called the product before it was called Protandim, they had, I want to say they had 75 dogs in that first study, and 40 of them were on a placebo and 35 of them were on the product. But all 75 people that were in the study correctly identified within 21 days whether their dog was on the product or on the placebo. They could tell the difference that much. So when I give this product to someone, I tell them, look for that magic 21-day window. In 21 days, you should see something in the performance of your dog, or the attitude of your dog, or how they're getting along, especially older dogs. Absolutely, for older dogs, I think it's incredibly important to feed this to them, because it just makes them that much more comfortable. I have a couple of old cattle dogs, and one of them, was so bad for so long. Once she'd lay down on the floor, especially in the wintertime, once it was time to get back up off that floor, to get out of the house, go out of the house in the morning to relieve herself, etc., it took a lot of work for her to get up, get moving, stretch out, whatever. After 21 days on Canine Health, guess what? Here we go. Open the door, she's up on her feet, and she's out the door. It made a difference in her, and I think you'll see that same kind of difference in your dogs as well. So all I can tell you is be confident and believe the science. The science proves that without a doubt, the cellular changes that the NRF2 formula is designed to create, they happen in dogs, they happen in horses, they happen in humans. It all happens the same. I haven't looked it up on PubMed lately, but at one point in time, there were 40-some thousand studies on PubMed, I think it was, on equine, or 4,000, I'm not sure, can't even remember the number, it's been so long since I looked it up. If you look up equine oxidative stress, there were thousands of studies on equine oxidative stress. You can look up canine oxidative stress, bovine oxidative stress, feline oxidative stress, and you can see what those numbers are. Again, I haven't checked them in years, to be honest with you, but the reality is that they're out there. And so people are doing studies. They're testing it. I know especially it's being tested in the horse world. And so just know that people know it's there. They know it matters. And I have complete confidence that if you're feeding your horse Protandim, that it's going to help the horse be healthier in the long term, but it is going to take a little bit of time for it to kick in. And once you can get Protandim is fabulous because it's formulated for dogs. Protandim is not. That's one of the reasons why they created that product to begin with. Was Protandim's not formulated for dogs. It's formulated for humans. The Protandim is formulated for dogs. It has additional things in it for dogs' heart health, for their joint health, and for their longevity. So you absolutely want to, as soon as it's available in your country, you want to get your dogs off of the Protandim and get them onto the Protandim. That's the best choice that you can make. So with that, that's about all I had to say today. Let's see here. Let's see if we can take a look at the chat screen and see if there's any questions I can answer. Helps with stiffness in joints. Heard that one before. Just see. Question, same for cattle as horses. The answer to that question is yes. It's all about surface area of the body. So if you have a newborn calf maybe that's sick, I would say 1 because it's smaller. Think of the surface area. But then if you have a full-grown cow that is weighing 800, 900, 1,000, 1,200 pounds, clearly 2 a day, you're pushing in the same kind of body mass as you would in a horse. I would say 2 a day. Now, what I will tell you is about my friends I see a question coming up about racehorses. I'll answer that in just a second. In cattle, here's what I've heard from a number of guys that use it on cattle. It's somewhat cost prohibitive in the cattle environment because most people have hundreds, if not thousands, of head of cows. So trying to feed 2 Protandim a day to hundreds of cattle, that's a lot, all right? Now, having said that, what the guys I know do is they feed it to what they refer to as their sicks, which is their sick cattle. So when they bring one in out of the herd that's got a problem and they need to doctor it, they use the Protandim on all the sick cattle because they see how much quicker they respond to whatever normal treatment, whether they're giving them an LA200 or whether, some other kind of drug they're giving them for whatever their problem is. They see greater, quicker responses when they're feeding them the Protandim. So definitely for the sick cattle. I think it would be somewhat cost prohibitive for anybody unless you have a very small herd. You're raising a bunch of, backyard cattle, if you will, 4 or 5 head. That's one thing. But when you're talking 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 head, I think you're out of control there. I just don't see that happening there. So let's go back to the question I saw earlier about the racehorses. I get this question a lot. People like to ask, it's not on the approved list. I know that. And here's what the racehorse people that I know have told me is what they've done is they've looked at the formula for Protandim and said, are any of those 5 ingredients on the banned substances list for the association that I run with? And if it's not, they feed it. Because if you think about what Protandim does, it treats nothing. All it does is activate the NRF2 protein pathway in the cell, something that you, as a human, were born with turned on until you reach skeletal maturity. It makes sense that NRF2 protein pathway is probably turned on in young horses as well. And now what you're doing is, once they're in the races, they should be at basically physical maturity. Now you're turning that switch back on. So in reality, you're not feeding it a drug. You're not feeding it something. In fact, what I tell people is shouldn't even be called a supplement, in my opinion, because a supplement means you're supplementing something. Well, we're not supplementing anything. We are a nutrigenomic. That nutrigenomic reaches into the DNA of the cell, the genome of the cell, and activates a protein pathway called the NRF2 pathway. So we're not trying to put a whole bunch of product in a body. In fact, I will tell you, there's a naturopath doctor that's in my business, and the first time I handed him a bottle of Protandim to talk to him about the product, he read the ingredients and he looked at the amount that was in there, and he said, Greg, I don't know why you would take this. He said, there's not enough in here to do you any good. And it made me think for a second, and I said, okay. I go ask him, why do you say that? And he said, I prescribe all 5 of these ingredients to different people for different reasons. But he said, I prescribe 3 to 5 times the amount that's in your pill, 3 to 5 times a day.
He said, that's how natural remedies work in treating a condition. And that's when the light bulb really went on for me to tell him, listen, I'm not treating a condition. I'm not trying to treat anything. All I'm trying to do is activate a pathway in the genome of the cell. And this formula, exactly in that ratio and density, activates that pathway. And that's why it works, not only in a human, but that's also why it works in a horse, because they're both mammals, or in a dog for that matter, because a dog's a mammal as well. So know that from a horse standpoint, for this racehorse question, it's not doing something the horse doesn't already know how to do. A horse knows how to turn on its NRF2 pathway. It was born with that NRF2 pathway turned on, and as it reached skeletal maturity, it turned off. You're just turning that pathway back on. That's all you're doing it. Or if the horse is younger and it's still got the NRF2 pathway turned on, you're upgrading that. You are up-leveling the performance of that NRF2 pathway. That's all you're doing. You're not doing anything else. So I know people in the racehorse world that have used it. They have passed the testing because there's nothing to test. But again, I tell them all, I say, it's up to you. It's your call to decide what you want to do, but make sure that your association does not ban any of the 5 ingredients that are in the pill. And if you do that, then it's your call as whether or not you move forward with it. But to me, it makes sense that you should be able to move forward with it at that stage of the game. Let's see. It says, I give Protandim and half Protandim to my Labradors. Don't recommend that, actually. I recommend you give Protandim only to your Labradors because it is formulated for your labs. Protandim is not formulated for it. And you should get, if you use the proper dosage instructions on the bottle, you should get the full impact, NRF2 activation impact in your dogs on Protandim and additional things that you get from your Protandim, so you're really not doing yourself any good. Comment on it says, my horse suffered from laminitis, and I believe it helped him in the last few months with inflammation. He's more sprightly now than moping around before. Absolutely seen that. I had a horse that got laminitis, blew out a hoof wall. We had to resection a section of his hoof wall that was about 3 inches wide from the bottom clear to the top, clear to the cornet band. He got along very, very well on Protandim, was hardly lame at all once we got him going, and healed fast, healed very fast. My vet and my horseshoer both said fastest healing horse he'd seen from a quarter section ever. So I truly believe that can help an awful lot. Let's see. All right, I think that's pretty much most of the questions I saw that came in and comments I saw. I love the comment, every horse deserves to be on Protandim. You're right. Make it your mission, guys. I talk about dogs a lot with people. The average dog has a lifespan of somewhere between 10 and 13 years. That's because dogs have 7 times the oxidative stress humans do. So they age faster than we do. If we can slow down oxidative stress, we can slow down aging. I don't know about you, but my dogs, I've got 2 of them right now. I've got an Australian cattle dog and a Corgi, Corgi Aussie Cross. And I will tell you that they're just children that eat off the floor in my house. That's all they are. And they're very, very important to us. The Lord did not provide my wife and I with children, but he did give us horses and he did give us dogs. And for that, we're eternally grateful. And so we care for them like they are our children. I've had more than one person tell me when they die, they want to come back as one of my horses, because they know that they're going to get well taken care of while they're here. So Protandim for the dogs, Protandim for the horses. If you can't get Protandim in your country yet, yes, Protandim works. We've seen it work. But as soon as Protandim's available, get your dog started on it right away, because it is actually better for your dog than straight Protandim is. Any other questions? Anybody else want to text me anything or put it out here? I think I've pretty much hit all the questions that came out. I hope what I had to say to you guys helped today. I'm always excited to talk about dogs and horses and our products. I'm very, very, very excited about where the company's going. For those of you who are at Global Convention, you saw a rousing cheer when Darren Jensen brought up the question about, well, should we be looking at Protandim for horses? I think he got the message, and he got it clear that there's a ton of us out there feeding Protandim, and that a formula that is designed for horses would be very good. He asked a question about cats as well, Susan, to your question there. And he did get some applause for that, but I think he got 10 times that applause for horses. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something come out for cats eventually. But I think horses might be on the top of their list. Other than that, I don't know. Any suggestions how to work through the skepticism with vets? Download that Horses and Protandim document I told you about. And in fact, I'll type that in here. That's the URL that'll take you to my Google Doc folder. There's a lot of old documents in there from years ago that I don't use for training any longer. But please get the Horses and Protandim doc and download that. It's fairly current. But it gives you advice how to talk to a vet. And it gives you advice how to talk to people, because it's the same story, to be honest with you. People are always asking me, how do I talk to a doctor? How do I talk to a vet? I go, the same way you talk to anybody. Sit down and talk to them about oxidative stress. Sit down and talk about longevity. I mean, guys, let's face it. We have 2 studies on our product that came out in July of 2016 that are monumental in the world of health and wellness. The one on longevity that proved that we help mammals live up to 7% longer. My God, people, no one else in the world gets to tell that story. There is no question about it. We need to lean on that. That's health span. That's not just lifespan. That's health span. If you're talking about it in human years, 7%, that's about 5 years. The question I ask people all the time is, do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? Or would you like to have some? What would 5 more years with your grandkids mean to you? So maybe the same question is, what would 5 more years with your horses mean to you? Or 5 more years with your dogs mean to you? What would 5 more years of you and their life mean to them? So the longer we can help our canine friends and our equine friends live, and the longer we can help them live healthier, I think that's the secret, is that health span, so that as they get older in their years, they're not all decrepit. They're living a good life. Because quite honestly, one of the toughest decisions all of us as animal owners ever have to make is when is when. When do we say enough is enough? And as a professional animal control officer, as an equine abuse investigator, I've had to have the conversation with hundreds of people in my life where I've had to say, this is about their quality of life, not about ours. If you're keeping them around in your life for your quality of life, not for theirs, it's time to have a hard conversation. So try to keep their quality of life, their health span, as long and healthy as you possibly can. Because if you do, I think your life will be better, their life will be better, and in the end, we'll all live a better life together. There's no question about it. It says, Greg, there's a question from Cindy in the Q&A. All right, let me go click on Q&A and see what happens. I didn't click on that. All right. How much? Okay, I think we answered the cattle. Let's see. Cindy, I have a 100-pound Burmese mountain dog. Congratulations. Love those kind of dogs. Ligament injury going on 8 weeks. Started Protandim. One day, already see improvement in less than a week. It says 1 time a day. So you're feeding 1 pill a day. 2 large dogs, is pet version better? They would need 4+ each day. Well, here's what I know. Protandim is formulated for dogs. There are additional things in Protandim that are not in Protandim that are for a dog's overall health. Now, I can only give you my personal opinion. I'm not a representative of the company. I am not a veterinarian. And calling me an expert just means I'm the guy from out of town. So all I can tell you is I know a lot of people who have socially told me that they feed Protandim to dogs when they're having an acute problem, because it tends to seem to create a bigger NRF2 response. But when they're not on the acute problem, definitely the Protandim is a better choice overall. One of the challenges we as leaders have given the company is to find a different way to package Protandim. Package it so that it's less expensive to feed. We're not into 4 pills a day because of the size of the dog. I have people that I know that, for example, have great mastiffs and really large dogs, and they've made a conscious decision not to feed Protandim, even though they could, and they're feeding Protandim instead because of the cost savings. That's your individual call if you choose to do that. Just understand, Protandim is formulated for dogs. Protandim is formulated for humans. So in the long run, they're going to miss something they would have gotten if they were being fed Protandim instead. So that's what I would tell you. So Cindy, that would be my answer to your question. Let's see.
There was just one more, I think, here, just about cats, Tonkinese cats. Do we feed Protandim to cats?
People feed it to cats all the time. They shave it off. They take a pair of scissors and they shave it off the end of the pill and put it in some feed or something, wet food. I've been told by more than one person that cats are extremely finicky. I wouldn't know. Mine live in the barn. They don't come in the house. So they get to eat what they get to eat out there. I feed them every day, but you know, the bottom line for me is that if you want to feed it to your cat, find something you can bury it in that they'll eat so they'll get it. It does have a pungent flavor, and most cats I know, I've been told stories, just don't want to eat it because of the taste. So that's one of the things that they'll have to overcome should the company develop a cat product. That a feline product is going to have something that tastes good to the cats. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, Greg. Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time. I think we've all learned so much about animals. That was a phenomenal, that was just amazing just to hear all that and just really understand a lot more about oxidative stress in animals. So I just want to thank you on behalf of Australia. We had nearly 70 people, I think, come on early this morning, but some have gone to work. So that was incredible. And yeah, we just want to thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for coming on and educating us on these incredible products.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you. You
take care. I'll see everybody down the road.
Bye.
Bye-bye.